invite Sara Bubber and Dr. Rachana Bhangaokar. They will speak on Mitrabheda and Mitraprapti from Panchatantra, a fascinating paper, Being and Becoming Friends. Saraji is a certified storyteller from Kathalaya's International Academy of Storytelling. Gitaji will be happy. She has an academic background of human development and family studies and strives to bring these two fields together as a research scholar. Saraji is also an author inspired by nature, and she's a poet inspired by the flow of life, and a meditator and a trainer of meditation at Heartfulness Institute. She understands the value of Indic knowledge body and tries to convey them through storytelling. Dr. Rachna, she is an assistant professor at Department of Human Development and Family Studies, the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. Her research includes cultural psychology, Indian perspectives on moral development, including concepts of dharma, karma, yoga, shraddha, and youth civic engagement and Gandhian philosophy. I welcome Saraji and Rachnaji. Over to you.
Thank you so much. I acknowledge Deepa Kiranji. I've stepped into the field of storytelling through her. Geeta Ramanujam madam, I've trained with her, and Vikram Sridhar, who introduced me to this deeper meaning of Panchatantra, and of course my guide and co-presenter, Dr. Rachana Bhangaokar. The topic of our presentation is Mitrabheda and Mitraprapti from the Panchatantra, Being and Becoming Friends. I'll run over the plan of presentation. There's going to be a short story snippet in the next slide. The introduction, developmental value of friends, contemporary friendships, method, framework, friendships in the Panchatantra, and parallel stories from the Jatakas and the Hitopadeshas, and finally, the implications and conclusions. So here I'll be playing the story.
But Brother Jackal, what should we do? The snake is so powerful. Don't worry, Crow. With a mighty brain, you can achieve the impossible. Now do as I say. And the Crow did exactly what the Jackal had told him to, and overcame the enemy, the snake.
So I hope the snippet shows invaluable. We are not born with friends, and therefore it is a voluntary relationship with no stipulated end time. It is only based, the foundation is only love and commitment. So there are texts like the Panchatantra, Jatak Tales, Hitopadesh, which really focus on outlining role of friends in life, because we'll see how it is very ingrained in the Indian system. In this paper, we are focusing on the lessons provided on friendship by Mitrabheda and Mitraprapti, which are the first two tantras of the Panchatantra. So here are some of the friendships which are very known. Here are within kin friendships, Manav, Manav, Rakshas, Rakshas, outside kin friendships, Gandharv, Manav, Vanar, Manav, Rakshas, Manav. Friendships provide a very good opportunity to move outside our kin, outside our family relationships, and explore interactions outside kin. So I'll be going to the developmental value of friends. As I said that friends are an outside family interaction. They become an important part of the child's microsystem. Children choose their own friends, they make their own norms, they make their own decisions. They move from an egocentric perspective to a sharing and collaborative perspective. And these play an important role in the social development of the child. Research also shows that stable friendships in childhood leads to lesser risk of depression in adulthood. When we learn qualities of friends, from friends, of friendships, we begin to treat everyone in a friendly way, and this can promote harmony and make us see a friend in everybody. That is the philosophy of Eko Hum Bahuswami. I'll go over the development of friendship very soon. We see play as the first observable characteristic in friendship. It moves from solitary play to parallel play to collaborative play. And because of this transition, we understand that children learn pro-social behavior of sharing and caring. By 6 years of age, we'll see that children show preferences of certain peer groups. And in adolescence, it takes a completely new dimension of a growing intimacy. We'll talk a little bit about contemporary friendships and why we need to revisit foundations of these classical texts. So conventional friends were very invested in the lives of their friends. We can see examples of Arjun Krishna. We can see examples in the Panchatantra itself of Hiranyak, the mouse, and his friends. We'll see it in the Mitraprapti section. Nowadays, in an online world, the opportunities to interact with others is growing. We have growing access to many people and their varied interests. We can get a lot of insight into their lives, but how many of those friends would actually come and help us in our times of distress is questionable. Research has also showed that online friendships can prove to be short and unstable. The method that we have followed is content analysis of Mitrabheda and Mitraprapti from Panchatantra by Jha and Anjana, published in 2021. It's a transliteration. And we've drawn parallels between Panchatantra and Jatak and Hitopadesh stories. A lot of them are common, a lot of them overlap and similar morals. The framework we have used is the Dharma framework. Panchatantra draws heavily from texts like Vedas, Shastras, Puranas, the epics, which talk a lot about Dharma. And so invariably, the theme also floats around in the Panchatantra throughout. One example is that Hiranyak the mouse wants to do his Dharma by helping his friend Chitragriv, the king of pigeons, by untying his net first, but Chitragriv, the king of pigeons, does his dharma by asking him to cut out the net of his followers first. So this is one cycle I wanted to point out. Moving on to why friendship is a part of the Panchatantra is because kings, the book is about kingship and how to be good kings, the dharma of a king. So a king needs to learn about friendships because they need to discern who are trustworthy advisors. They are very valuable to the success of a kingdom, and put them away from selfish people. One of the example is that of Sanjivak, Pingalak and Damanak in the first in Mitrabheda. Sanjivak and Pingalak get together because of Damanak, and then they are separated by Damanak, the jackal. Here is a summary of the lessons on friendship in the Panchatantra, which I'll be explaining in detail in the next slide. So we'll come to lessons from the Mitrabhed. The framework story is that of Sanjivak and Pingalak. Sanjivak is a bull, Pingalak is the lion. So the lessons that come out of this tantra is that friendship is a private relationship. It is between two people. Even if you're a friend circle, you'll have an individual relationship with everyone. There is trust in this relationship. And when a third person comes into this relationship, there is a threat. Now, in this story, the friendship breaks when a third person comes in. But we have a question that should friendship actually be so weak that it should break when a third person would come in or not? This is a question to ponder. Until exchanges continue, that is when Pingalak and Sanjivak both believed that they loved each other, they respected each other, the friendship lasted. When the seeds of doubt were sown, both of them went apart and Sanjivak was killed at the end of it. An interesting thing that comes out of Mitrabhed is that a friendship between a herbivore and a carnivore is possible. It is not conventional, but when it ends, it could have been something which could have led to a better alliance between herbivores and carnivores, but ended up finishing in this tantra. There is a story within this tantra, which is the story of Papa Buddhi and Dharma Buddhi. The model which comes out of it is that one must be cautious while making friends. Papa Buddhi and Dharma Buddhi are very good friends. And Papa Buddhi cheats Dharma Buddhi. Dharma Buddhi eventually ends up clearing his name, but this is the message that comes through and through, that even if you have a friendship of so many years, you must be very careful as to what the nature of the friend is. We'll move on to lessons from the Mitraprapti. The framework stories of Hiranyak the mouse, Laghupatanak the crow, Mantharak the tortoise, and Chittarang the deer. This shows a very good perspective of friendship between natural enemies. Hiranyak is very wary of being friends with a crow who is his natural enemy. He even enlists natural enemies like snake, mongoose, crows, owls, and says that friendship between them is never possible. But Laghu Patanak, the crow, is so he wants to have him as a friend so badly that finally Hiranyak agrees. They begin to live as friends. This friendship is based on principles of dharma. Both of them follow a specific code of conduct. Hiranyak sets conditions because he's a natural enemy. Initially, he sets conditions. Later on, they become very good friends. There is an exchange. So Hiranyak is explaining the nature of friendship to Lagupatanak, and that is that there has to be an exchange. The exchange can be both material and non-material. So there is an exchange of secrets, dialogues, conversations, meals, homes, etc. And both of them continue to exchange dialogues every day, have very meaningful dialogues, exchange their meals, whatever they can gather. A theme which is very pervasive in this tantra is support in distressful times. So Chitragriv, the king of pigeons, remembers Hiranyak the mouse when he is stuck in a tough time in the net of the hunter. When the crow Lagupatanak is going to migrate to another place, he takes his friend along because he doesn't want to leave his friend in distress in a drought-prone place. And finally, towards the conclusion, there is a lot of activity in this story where a hunter comes, catches Chitaranga the deer. Hiranyak makes a plan to get him out of the trap. And finally, Mantharak, who is very slow, but he's also worried for his friend Chitaranga the deer. He also comes there, gets trapped. They make a plan to save him. So this theme of support in distressful times is something which is there throughout this tantra. Within this tantra, there is a story we have heard of very often, which is that of the talkative tortoise. So when his friends, the geese, advise him that you should not open his mouth, he does not follow the advice and opens his mouth and ultimately crashes to his death. And that story proves that one must follow the guidance of worthy friends because they know the strengths and weakness of an individual. We have some parallel stories from other texts. So in the Jatakas, there is a story of true friends. There is Nigrod Kumar, Shakha Kumar, and Pautrik. And Shakha Kumar pretends to be Pautrik's friend, which earns the displeasure of Nigrod Kumar, who is a king and finally leads Shakha Kumar to be out of service employment. So the moral coming out of it is one should be true to their friends and not pretend. The story of Kanni the unlucky. Kalakanni is believed to be a really inauspicious man because of his poverty, because of his tattered clothes and his inauspicious name. But at the end of the story, it is he who saves his friend Seth Anathapindak from sure doom of being robbed by thieves, and he gains the respect of everybody else. There is the story of the elephant and the dog, which shows just loyalty, the sense of being present with each other. It is just exchanging company. And both of them, when they are torn apart, they cannot live without each other. And finally, they come in, once again, they come together and begin to lead their life together. There is stories from the Hitopadesh. Hitopadesh draws from the Panchatantra, and so a lot of stories overlap as well. The story of the crow, mouse, deer, and tortoise is there, as is in the Hitopadesh. It's just a shortened version. There are two other stories which I found which give the same message, that is, be cautious of bad company. One is that of the jackal, crow, and the deer. The jackal approaches the deer to be his friend, and the crow cautions him against being the jackal's friend. The jackal, however, wins the deer over, leads him to a trap, and doesn't save him. At the end, it is the crow who comes and saves the deer. Finally, there is the story of the vulture, the cat, and the birds, which the vulture trusts the cat, ends up trusting the cat, and the cat eats up all the fledglings of all the birds. And the birds believe that it's the vulture who killed the fledglings, and finally they kill him. And thereby these messages come out from these two stories. I'll move on to the last slide, the implication and the conclusion. So inclusion of stories in the curriculum. Earlier in the oral tradition, children would learn stories from their families, from their grandparents. In modern times, it might not be possible due to nuclearization of families, and therefore it is very important to have these stories in the curriculum. So there are certain stories, like I have mentioned in the slides above, The Talkative Tortoise, Crow and the Serpent. These stories are very much there. We always tell them to children, but we can bring out the novel perspectives. We've often heard the moral to be, don't open your mouth when it's not needed for the Talkative Tortoise, or for the Crow and the Serpent. It does not matter if you're small or big. It is your brain that matters, brain over brawn. We can give newer morals and ask children to ponder upon these topics. We can introduce picture books like Amar Chitra Katha to children, which have all these stories for easier understanding. So interestingly, I was told in my childhood that Amar Chitra Katha is something that I should not be reading. This was by my teacher. I should be focusing on literary, heavier literary books, which would lead me to be better in language. But I think today it is those books which have helped me ground in this Indic base. We have story circles. So when we have a human storyteller who tells stories, we can have human storytellers telling stories on friendship rather than watching the stories on YouTube in an animated way. We can interact with human beings like this. Not only stories on friendship, we can have human storytellers tell any stories. So one is stories on friendship would help them get the moral. Post-activity sessions with any stories would help children from various backgrounds come together, do activities together, learn these group dynamics and interpersonal relationships among themselves, multi-age, same age, different schools, etc. There is a third very important and the last point, which is in the modern age, we have a lot of friends with artificial intelligence, like Alexa and Siri are some which are very commonly heard. There are some things that we should take with a pinch of salt when we hand over our children in their care. That is, in recent news, we heard that Alexa guided a child to put the hand into an electrical socket. So we should really be discerning as to how much of these interactions we have to allow. So about friendships, this is all that I had to present, and these are the references that I have used.
Thank you so much, Saraji, for a very, very fine presentation. And I think something that is much needed to go back to Panchatantra is very essential for our civilization. In the past, the traditional education in the classical areas started with Raghuvamsha, Ramayana Mahabharata, Panchatantra, and then Raghuvamsha. That was the sequence that would form the cultural grounding of anybody across communities. If we see Dharampal's work on education, it is quite clear that that kind of an educational foundation was accessible to all communities of India. I think the second problem with so much knowledge is not being accessed. Panchatantra is at once a narrative and also a knowledge that can be so well accessed at multiple ages. I think reflecting of this in the modern plane is very essential, and that is the endeavor of conferences such as ours. Bring it into the modern world so that it gains acceptance as a knowledge form, as is appealing to the modern world. Thank you so much, and I'm sure audiences will have some interesting questions on this subject. Any thoughts? Anything to discuss, audience? So thank you so much, Saraji and Dr. Rachana, and look forward to many more such papers from your side, bringing the classical world of India into the modern world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.